This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Drobo, smart storage that grows with you and protects what matters. Get 10% off your Drobo at drobostore.com using the offer code MV10. Welcome to Mac Notables on MacVoices. This is the talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner, folks from the Great White North, Mr. Jim Dalrymple. Jim, it's great to talk to you.
You too, Chuck.
Yeah, it's been a little while. Do you you're into the cold weather now?
Yes, it's very cold.
Okay, now what is very cold for you?
Well, it's in the minuses.
That's pretty cold. Okay.
Yeah.
You smoked me, Jim. I can't touch that.
I'm just like things are freezing. And I don't mean like mud puddles or anything. I mean like cities.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that would do it. Do it. So, well, I assume that you have a fire built somewhere and you're very comfortable.
Well, we're all in an igloo, so we're all good.
But the advantage is that the Heineken is chilled.
That's right. That is an advantage. But you have the same advantage in the summer when it hits zero. So
it sounds like you just don't win up there.
No. Unless you drink a lot of beer.
Yeah. Do you have that covered, Jim?
Oh, I've got that covered.
Okay. I've heard of that.
Covered for the whole village.
Yeah, I've heard that somewhere. So what's new at the Loop? Anything interesting and exciting?
Well, I released a new version of the Loop magazine app a few weeks ago, and that was pretty big for me to do. I think it's probably the most advanced magazine app that's available on Newsstand right now. It's very, very slick app, but still focused on reading. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, that's good. It's nice to see some of these magazine apps get traction. Glenn Fleischman does the magazine. You have the Loop magazine.
Yep.
Don McAllister does his Screencast Online magazine. A whole new kind of concept in content delivery that feels like it's a lot more affordable and is a lot more focused.
Yeah, and for me, it's a lot different because the stuff that I have on the Loop are links to interesting stories, but these are long form stories that I've hired people to write specifically for the Loop magazine. So it's very interesting to be able to do stuff like that and just hand pick people to write stories.
Right. Well, by all means, folks, go check out the Loop magazine. It's in the iTunes store, Jim, right?
Yep.
I have that right. Check it out and see if it's for you. I think you will definitely find things of interest. No question.
Yeah, I mean the topics that we cover in there are not just tech topics. They're everyday things. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to read. I enjoy some of the topics that writers are submitting.
So, Jim, do you go out and obviously you curate what goes in the magazine, but do you go out and reach for people to write things, or can people apply to write for your magazine?
Yeah, they can email me, and if they have an idea of something that they want to write about, a lot of times, I'll go out and see somebody that I like to read, and I'll ask them to write something, that's exclusive for me.
Good deal.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But the world's changing, Jim.
It is. I like it.
Well, kind of along those lines, what I had in mind for us, every year, at the end of the year, people do, the top stories of 2013. And I always feel like those are just sort of filler things, because it's pretty easy to go back through the archives, pick out a few things, and then opine on them. What I'd like for us to talk about, though, is the big trends that came out of this year. And those trends can be, trends, or they can be individual events. Whatever you think, instead of, the quick hit and gone, what is going to have long-term impact for Apple, for us as Apple users, for us as technology users? Where is this going to go? And interestingly, I'll get us started by one that I know is kind of near and dear to your heart, and and that's the almost certain death of BlackBerry.
Yeah. Well, I don't see where they really have anywhere left to go. I mean, you know.
But do they leave, Jim? Do they leave a crater, or has the crater already been filled in? Is anybody going to notice when they finally go down?
No. There's no. I mean, nobody's gonna really notice. You know, if they had have closed down in 2007 and just, you know, all of a sudden shut down, closed doors, there would have been a huge crater. But at this point, there really won't be. I mean, iPhone and some Androids have been okayed by businesses and governments to use, and that was really BlackBerry's. That was their bread and butter. And once that started to disappear, I mean, you started to see Fortune 500 companies say that they were getting rid of it because they weren't confident about their future and they didn't want to invest any more in it. You know, that's pretty bad when things like that happen. So I don't know what they can do at this point to turn it around, because everything that they've done has just pushed it further into the sinkhole.
It just, I mean, it feels like they really don't have much of a place left unless you're just going to count them as a niche player. Because you have Android, you have iOS, I guess you have Windows Phone to a much less degree. And, you know, there is a faction of loyal BlackBerry users, but can they sustain the company?
No.
I'm not betting on it now.
But I don't think that Windows Phone is doing anything spectacular either. You know, today there was an article posted on, I don't know where it was posted, Business Week or Forbes, an interview with Steve Ballmer. And he said that his philosophy was, he asked himself the question, how do we make money? How do we make money? How do we make money? And that's how he ran the company. But I think that's the problem with Microsoft, because Apple's philosophy is, how do we make the best product? And Apple expects that money will follow. If they make the best product, then the money will follow. And they've proven that over and over again over the last decade or more, 15 years. So when I hear Ballmer saying, you know, how do we make money, I start to think that that's exactly why Microsoft has a bunch of crappy products, because all they're considering is, how do they make money? And, you know, Apple sweats the details, the little tiny things, you know, what color and what shade of white and black you're going to use. And you know, they sweat the manufacturing processes and everything that goes into making a product. And that's what sets them apart. And, you know, Samsung is in the same boat. Samsung's just a Microsoft. How do we make money? You know, they're trying to get as much product out there as they can. But people will eventually see through it.
Yeah, Samsung's a different animal, because Samsung seems to latch on to whatever it can. And, and right now it's been latching on to Apple a lot, trying to get things out that I don't know that it's bait and switch, and I don't know that it's, I don't know if they're counting on people that they just don't realize that it's not an iPhone or it's not an iPad, or whether they really are trying to market it as its own product and not do that. But there are times that I look at the physical appearance of these things and I just shake my head and say, you know, really? Can you be proud of this?
Yeah. And I don't think that pride is anything that really comes into Samsung's thinking. They're thinking about selling. And, you know, that it's a huge difference. I mean, when you see an Apple person talking about their product, you know, something that they worked on, they're proud of it. But, you know, you don't see Samsung like that. They're always trying to push, you know, like a salesman. Everybody is like a used car salesman, you know, and there's too many honest Joes that are trying to sell you a smartwatch that nobody wants.
Okay, you keep getting ahead of me. So let's go to the smartwatch.
Okay.
The smartwatch, is this a fad? Is this a trend? Is this something that is not? It's been delivered to market, not fully baked yet.
Yes. Yeah, it's not a fad. It's not a trend. It's nothing. It doesn't sell enough to be anything. The idea of a wearable device is something I think that, given the right circumstances, we would like to see as a trend. But what Samsung delivered is not it. I mean, Samsung delivered really not much more than what Pebble did, or any of these other smartwatch makers. And if you sat back and gave yourself a wish list and said, here are the things that I would like a wearable device to do for me, does the Samsung smartwatch meet those? No. Does it come close? No. It's a watch that, why go through the hassle of looking at it like a 1-inch screen when you've got this gigantic Samsung phone in your pocket or in a wagon behind you, because it's so big you have to carry it in a wagon? Why not just pick it up and actually see? I mean, all it is an intermediary step to what you actually want to do, and it doesn't make any sense. So,
okay, and I'm with you. In fact, I think it's somewhat ironic that Samsung has been the proponent of the phablet-sized phones, and yet they're trying to put a smaller screen on your watch. And it's like, well, why don't you just get an iPhone and split the difference? But that having been said, Jim, I guess I'm thinking more not necessarily that. Or the Pebble, and the Pebble seems to, at least from where I sit, deliver more, and I have not played with one. But the whole idea of a smartwatch, is that something that is going to carry forward, and assuming somebody can deliver on it, or is it just the newest tech toy that somebody had to dream up to try to sell people?
I think that people, I don't think people want a smartwatch. I think people want a smart wearable device, whatever that is. I don't necessarily think it's a watch. It could be a device that tells time, but I don't think it's a watch.
Is it something you strap on your wrist?
Maybe. Maybe it's something you strap, on your arm, or I don't know. But the wrist is a good place to have something, because it's always, your wrist is there. It's something that you can look at if you need to. Well, at least you hope it's always there. But I want a device, a smart device, to do more than connect via Bluetooth to my phone. If that's all it's going to do, then I'll just use my phone. I want it to do more. I want it to, think of all of the devices and all of the things that we use on a daily basis, and how a smartwatch or a smart device could communicate with those. That's what I want. It's not just in with our phone. It's everywhere we are. It's in our home. It's in our car. When you're on your bicycle. Well, some people still have bicycles. I don't know. It sounds like exercise to me. And I just think that there's a lot of room for smart devices, but not smart watches. I think Samsung took it too literally. And I think Apple probably sat back and laughed, just like most of us did.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it wasn't just Apple. If they did, yeah, because I don't know if you've seen one, but I look at it and it's like, okay, this is a box that they want me to strap to my wrist. I mean, right. the Pebble at least has a little bit of style, and
yeah,
they've built some interesting things for iOS or in conjunction with iOS. Is it there yet? Well, not for me, but I think for a lot of people, at least it's a start.
I don't think that it'll ever be there for me. Not like that. I'm looking, for lack of a better term, I'm looking for something a bit more magical than that. I to have a watch that can do something besides tell time, I don't really care. Really.
Well, okay, I can't not ask this question. So what magic would you put in it if you could? What would you want in a smartwatch? Or, excuse me, what would you want in that device that you put on your wrist?
Well, I mean, again, if you look back at all of the things that we work with all day long, you have your computer, your iPad, your iPhone, the stereo in your car, the stereo at home, the television, the kitchen. Maybe there's devices in there that you'll be able to communicate with. But there are a lot of things, and I think a lot of personal preferences that if a device could communicate with all of these things for us, then, there's things that it could do to help us. Whether it's when I walk in, it turns on Ozzy and, starts playing Blizzard of Oz for me, that whole album, because it knows that I walked into that room because my smart device is communicating with my Apple TV. I don't know. I mean, I'm not one of the smart guys. The smart guys are out there at Apple and other places putting this stuff together. But I just think that there's more that should be able to be done. And I think that there's enough smart people out there to be able to do it. And that's what we should be looking for. I mean, that's magic. That kind of stuff is magic.
Yeah, and at the risk of speculating too much, looking at what they're starting to talk about with iBeacons.
Yeah.
And you start to see, that my device, my iPhone now, maybe something else later, you're right, walk in, turn on the TV, turn on the lights, adjust the temperature, and it wouldn't rely on GPS technology. It would rely just on proximity technology.
Right.
With an iBeacon that maybe I set one up in every room in my home.
Yep. And, you being the king of your castle would have preference over anybody else. So you could set it to override and not let anybody else walk into the room and, take over from you. But you could, there's so many little things, but you have to expect, I think, and I expect great things from Apple when they come out with a product. You have to be able to expect that Apple is thinking about this and will come up with something like that. And we've seen now what Samsung can do when it doesn't copy Apple. They released what's it called? The Gear? Galaxy Gear? They released that. So now let's see what Apple comes up with, whether it's a smartwatch or some kind of wearable device or, whatever it is, and see how long it takes Samsung to copy it.
Well, one of the things that I was shocked at the Gear, and I forget which model, but it only really works with one phone. And it's like, so if I don't have that phone, I've got to buy the phone to get the watch, or I have to make sure I have the pair, and then you deal with just the style issue, the function issue.
Yeah.
It just frankly seems an ill-conceived product.
The battery doesn't work that well, and it's uncomfortable to wear. It's crazy to think that Samsung expected this was going to be a popular product. And as it turns out, it's not. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if maybe they saw value or what they perceived as value in being first to market in this category. And I'm not even sure that they really qualify, because I think the Fitbits and the Nike Fuel Band and all those are a lot more useful to a lot more people.
And Dick Tracy.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Drobo, smart storage that grows with you and protects what matters. Get 10% off your Drobo at drobostore.com using the offer code MV10. I'm more than a little pleased to welcome back Drobo as a sponsor of MacVoices. That's because I'm not just a Drobo customer, I'm a Drobo fan. I have, well, more Drobos than I should probably admit in public. It's a bit of a habit. I really don't like to throw anything away because I might need it at some time, and with producing a video show, that adds up to some pretty healthy storage requirements. And just to be sure, you know about the Drobo 5D, the one with the Thunderbolt and USB 3 connections that is perfect for audio, video, and picture work, right? And the Drobo 5N, the network-attached storage Drobo that sports gigabit Ethernet so that all your Macs can share files and be backed up by Time Machine, right? Okay, good. You've been paying attention. First, Drobo now has some amazing pricing on drive bundles. That means you can buy your Drobo with the drives included, ready to fire up and go right out of the box. Some companies would make you pay a premium for that feature, but not Drobo. They are delivering the drives at the lowest possible price. No markup. Don't believe me? No problem. You can still buy an empty Drobo and use your own drives, or buy them somewhere else. But you want to buy them from Drobo, since they use the drives that are optimized for performance. And you won't have anything to do when you get your Drobo except plug it in. So go ahead, pick up that Drobo 5N for $14.99 with 20 terabytes of storage, or that Drobo 5D for $16.99 with 20 terabytes of storage. Oh, don't need that much to start? Okay. Then the 5N with 2 terabytes of storage can be had for $6.99, and the 5D for $8.49 with 2 terabytes. And best of all, when you do outgrow that 2 terabytes, all you have to do is add another drive to get more space. No shutdown, software upgrade, or hoop jumping required. And in case you're contemplating other options, you'll want to know that buying a drive bundle from Drobo can be 25% to 67% less than some of the other options you might be thinking about. So stop thinking about them and get a Drobo. The other big news right now is that Drobo has just introduced a Drobo App Store for the Drobo 5N. Now you can customize the functionality of the 5N with featured apps like the Home Media Server Plex, the Sync and Share app Copy, and Elephant Drive, which lets users back up files to Amazon S3 Cloud. Because after all, you still have to back up a Drobo in case of fire, theft, or meteor strike. The Drobo App Store also features community apps, developed by users and developers from drobospace.com. That means the universe of Drobo apps is just starting. It's like the Big Bang for your Drobo. Sound exciting? Then go to drobostore.com and get yours for 10% off with the code MV10. Or, until December 23rd, get special pricing on your Drobo 5N at Amazon and B&H Photo. Those are the best prices available for a limited time, and I really want you to have a Drobo. Wherever you get yours, please tweet me at ChuckJoyner and use the hashtag Drobo4MV. That supports the show, supports Drobo, and lets me know that your data is protected. I can sleep more soundly knowing that. Drobo, smart storage that grows with you and protects what matters. Thanks to Drobo for sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. Yeah. Okay, so you also hit on one of the other things, and you and I love to bash Microsoft, but a couple things have happened here with Microsoft this year. Ballmer is announced his retirement, so within a year he's going to step down.
Yep.
Or at least he says he is. Microsoft has done away with their stack ranking that has been, a hallmark of Microsoft for a long, long time. It feels like there might be some cultural changes at Microsoft coming. Are they? Is this a trend you see, or do you think it could be happening, or do you just think they're the way they are and the culture is too ingrained to turn?
I hope that they can change, because there are a lot of smart people at Microsoft too, but what Microsoft releases is determined by Ballmer and the executives, and it's clear that they don't have a clue what they're doing. All these Windows releases and Windows Phone stuff. The one product from Microsoft that I really like is the Xbox. Other than that, Microsoft could just go away and I wouldn't miss them.
And isn't it interesting that the Xbox is the Xbox, and it's not the Windows Xbox or anything like that. It feels like somebody, God knows how they slipped it past them, actually got it out there and cut loose the whole anchor that is Windows, and they actually did a decent product.
And it is an anchor. I mean, if you look at, even take Ballmer's thing with Windows Phone and say, how am I going to make money? Well, make a decent product, and then you'll make money. I know that's not always true. There are a lot of great products from companies that have gone under, and that's very unfortunate. But Microsoft, I think, has the ability and the people to be able to lead instead of follow. And right now they're following, and they're so far behind in the follow race now that, whether they'll even be able to catch up, I don't know. And who's going to be the next CEO? Don't know. Nokia? What's the guy from Nokia's name?
I know who you mean. He headed up Nokia. He used to be at Microsoft, then went to Nokia. Now he's back in the Microsoft fold.
Islop, or
yeah.
Is it going to be him? I don't know. Who knows who it'll be? But Ballmer's going to pick him, so that means that he's going to suck. And we'll probably have to wait until he screws up and leaves before we get a decent one. But, it's not easy to run a company the size of Apple or Microsoft or Sony or, Panasonic or, these are huge, huge companies with a lot of different products. And, I wouldn't want to do that job. It'd be easy to run RIM. They've only got one product and it sucks. So you can't do any worse. But yeah, I think Microsoft's troubles aren't over for sure.
It would be hard to imagine taking on that job, and it's so easy for the two of us to sit here and criticize everything that's wrong with it. And heaven knows, in the past couple weeks, I've done a lot of criticism on camera, and I've also cursed a lot under my breath at Microsoft off camera. And I just, to think about, okay, what would it take to fix that? To turn the culture, to retool, to do what is necessary, and get rid of some of that. It would be a staggering job.
Microsoft needed to get rid of Ballmer in, at least 2007, 2008. When it became clear that he read the mobile business so badly as to make fun of the iPhone and say that no one would buy it, I think that was the cue for the board to say, okay, you know what? You're not getting this. And we need somebody who does. They might have had a chance, at least a better chance than what they do right now. But he let it go for so long, just having mock funerals for, older product. It was just silly stuff. So,
well, the one thing I will say, I will give them credit that they have jettisoned some things from the past. The Zune, I don't think that went this year. I think that went year before this. But they have shut down some things that I don't know if they were dragging, but they clearly were not successful. And so, was that just Ballmer trying to make money, or were they really recognizing that maybe they needed to start to try to trim the fat, even if it was just little pieces? At least they were trying.
I think what Ballmer saw is, an MP3 player. Well, that's easy to do. We'll make an MP3 player, and we'll take 90% of the market because we're Microsoft, and we're big and bad, and, we can do that. And it's not that easy because they made a piece of crap. And people aren't going to fall for that. There was a time when 90% of the market was locked into Microsoft in one way or another. And, whether it was Office or Windows, they had a PC. But things aren't like that anymore. And people, listeners of this show and people that surf the web are a lot smarter because there's a lot more resources available to us than what there was before. And, you know, people don't have to take Microsoft's word for it. They don't have to take my word for it. They can go out and do research themselves and say, wow, yeah, the Zune was a bad product. And the Microsoft Kin, remember the Kin? That phone that they brought out, it lasted like 2 months?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh, come on. And then for like 2 or 3 years in a row at CES, Ballmer announced a new tablet, the Courier and the Slate, and none of them ever came. Because he's a moron. He doesn't know what he's doing. And, you know, he led Microsoft down the wrong path.
It'll be interesting to see. You know, I get the feeling, and there, like you said, there's some great people at Microsoft. There's some really smart people at Microsoft, and if they can just kind of get out of their own way, you know, there's a chance that they can start to produce good products. I
think if you took some engineers at Microsoft and said, we need a phone, and we need an operating system to run on that phone. No restraints, no nothing. Build me something, show me something that will work. I think that Microsoft will be able to come up with something because they're smart people. But when you take that same group of engineers and say, okay, it has to run Windows OS. This version of Windows OS can't be scaled down, has to be, you know, this thing, and it has to do this, and you can't do this over here. I mean, once you tie their hands, then they're going to come up with exactly what you wanted them to come up with. And that's the problem with Microsoft, because everybody's coming up with exactly what Ballmer wants.
Right.
And it's no good. So, you know, the difference being with Steve Jobs, you know, when he was there, and with Tim and the executive team that are there, they say, okay, here's a problem. How are we going to fix this problem? Everybody go away and come back with some thoughts on how we're going to deal with this. And, you know, they're reaching out into thin air with ideas and technologies that are just being built, and, you know, here's what we can do. Okay, let's start working on that. 3 years later, you end up with this amazing product. You know, and there are no limits on things that you can look at to make that work.
And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of Me Too going on. You know, it doesn't mean that Apple invents everything, but if they look at something, they examine it, they rethink it, they try to figure out what would make it the best product possible, and then go from there. And it's interesting to hear you describe the process at Microsoft, because I think that is true. Because it does seem like everything starts with Windows and then builds out from there, and Apple starts with nothing and builds from there.
Well, look at Apple's made 2 or 3 purchases recently of companies. You know, $200 million that they spent for one. I mean, Apple's got $100 billion in the bank. $200 million is like taking, 2 cents when you have $1,000, and you give that 2 cents to somebody. You know, I mean, they don't even notice that. Tim found that $200 million in his coffee cup holder on his car on the way to work. You know, so. That kind of stuff, when they see something that they want to do, and people ask me, what product do you think they're going to come out with that technology? Well, you don't know. You know, it could be something as simple as technology that's going to be built into the iPhone from now on. It could be, you know, a brand new product. You don't know, because Apple buys this stuff because it's interested in, you know, what this company is doing and the patents that it has, and, you know, the lock-on technology it has. They could do any number of things with it. And that goes for every single company that they buy or every technology that they license. it's not necessarily a product all its own. It could be an integration of a technology to make something else completely different work.
Right.
So we don't know about that stuff.
Since we've moved to Apple, let's talk about Apple a little bit. The iPhone, the iPad, I mean, they seem to just be logical extensions of what's been there. Earlier this year, Apple was drawing fire for not coming up yet with the next big thing, whatever it is. Never mind that, just come up with the next big thing, like clockwork.
Yeah.
So are we, I don't think that we're stagnant, but are we just on a trajectory now, Jim, that is going to see improvements in these products for a while? And is that enough at this stage of the game? Or is Apple really going to be under pressure? And I'm talking about real market pressure, not some of the fantasies of the analysts, but real market pressure to come up with something?
Unfortunately, those analysts do lead to real market pressure. And the analysts don't have a clue themselves what they're talking about. While Apple needs to, it's funny when you read a story in a business publication and the quote from the analyst is, Apple really needs a blockbuster product. Well, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Show me a company that doesn't need a blockbuster product.
Yeah.
Everybody does. But, this analyst gets quoted because he says Apple needs a blockbuster product. Well, that's about the stupidest thing I've heard. When people say stuff like that. And, I mean, when you look at innovation isn't coming out with a blockbuster product every, year, every 2 years. Innovation is those iterative changes that come out in the iPhone where Apple can slice off 10 millimeters of height from the iPhone and slip even more technology in there, better technology in there, to make the phone more powerful and smaller. That's innovative. But the analysts don't like that. Mm-hmm. They want a laser gun in the iPhone because that would be innovative. And those analysts don't want me to have an iPhone with a laser gun, I'll tell you that.
Well, I think we've seen some people that have done some of those things, and there are Samsung, and there are RIM, and there are a few others who just stack features in for the sake of stacking them in, and it ends up detracting from the product instead of enhancing it.
That's exactly right. I mean, there are what I call checklist items that, NFC was a big one. And, everybody for a while was talking about NFC. Well, the iPhone doesn't have NFC and Samsung does. Okay, so what do you use it for? Well, nothing. Mm-hmm. So what's the point? Why put that in there? Until retailers have the machines to be able to communicate with your NFC device, what's the point of having it? And all it is an item that Samsung can say, yes, we have NFC. Who cares?
That's a real good point, because before the iPhone 5, what we now know as the iPhone 5S and 5C came out, that was something that everyone was saying, you got to have. It's, if they don't, oh my God, it's a huge mistake. And 2 minutes after it came out and it wasn't there, you never heard about it again.
No. But what they did have is an A7 chip that's 64-bit. It's just like a powerful desktop computer in your hand now. And, 64-bit, that's desktop technology in an iPhone. And, when you look at the power that the iPhone and the iPad have and say, well, who cares? Well, the developers care. And, because the developers care, we care as consumers. Because we want those cool apps. We want the apps to be more powerful and be able to do more things. And the more powerful Apple makes the device, the more room the developers have to work. And, for a while, from 2007 till this year, what would happen is Apple would release a device developers would, hit right up against that ceiling of, okay, we've gone as far as we can go. And then Apple would release another device and give them some headroom. And then the developers would come up and meet that. And it was just, leapfrogging every year. Well, this year, Apple was 64-bit. Apple kind of heightened and made some depth and gave developers even more headroom so that they can go out and do some pretty amazing things. That's what we buy, and that's what we want. We want those developers to say, wow, remember, we talked about a science app that could, you could actually go inside the globe and see fiery mountains and all kinds of, well, we can make that now because of the power of the iPhone and iPad. We've seen these devices go beyond making phone calls and having web apps to being involved in businesses and schools and governments. And I mean, the number of things that they're helping us do now, I mean, that's a big trend, and a lot of this stuff happened just this year, in the last couple of years, where governments are getting them for their members of parliament and things like that. It's tremendous stuff that, and they're saving on paper, so that they're not going through all the paper because it's all on their iPads now. That's great stuff.
Yeah. Jim, another thing I've noticed is it seems like Tim Cook and Apple have become more politically involved recently, and not necessarily in a formal way, but advocating different causes, advocating different workers' rights and things, and they do it. They've done it kind of quietly. And I say they, meaning Tim on individually and Apple, but they've done it quietly. They've just sort of put it out there, and I have to wonder: is that something? Yes, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it. Is that something that would have happened under Steve, or is it just now the time, regardless of who's at the helm, to do it?
I think it started under Steve. Steve's the one that started pushing that. Okay. When you talk about workers' rights, Steve was working with workers' rights around the world. I know that Tim just did something recently, but Steve looked at China and he looked at Apple's entire supply chain and all the factories to make sure that everything was up to snuff. So he's the one that really started that ball rolling. So, when you look at some of the other things that have happened, they were started under Steve too, whether you look at the environment or, maybe Tim is just being more open, now that he's on Twitter. Maybe Tim's just being a bit more open about it. I mean, I thought that it was interesting. What was it, a week or so ago, where Apple turned all the white Apple logos red in support of World AIDS Day. That was very interesting thing for them to do. Tim wrote an article, didn't he? Wasn't that in the New York Times or something? Yeah. But, Steve wrote into Business Week or Fortune or one of those sites before when they talked about his stock options. And Steve offered to sell them as stock options because at that point they were worth nothing. So, it's not beyond Steve to do some interesting things too.
So, do you think it's just it's the nature of the environment that's out there, the online environment, the social environment, and the way it's progressed? You think that's that it is time for this, and is this a good trend, or are these places where Apple shouldn't play for reasons that it's so easy to say, well, of course that's a good cause. Well, there are a million good causes out there. There are a million admirable things that you can do.
Exactly right.
So you and I both have to pick and choose. We can't support every cause. is a company like Apple, I mean, should they be doing that, or should they just be sort of sitting, I don't want to say on the sidelines, but sitting sort of neutrally, managing what's going on within their own walls and leaving the rest to somebody else?
And there's an argument to be made for both sides of that question, but Apple has always been Apple. They've always said, Steve, product red with Bono and the U2 iPod. Steve did that. And Apple continues to raise money for disaster relief, for tsunamis and natural disasters that happen around the world. So, should Apple stop doing that? They collect millions and millions of dollars to help people, not just in the U.S., but all over. I don't think they should stop that. I think other companies should pick it up. These Wall Street people that slap Apple down for everything that they do. Why don't you donate, a few $1,000,000 each, and get in there? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I am also of the belief that if you make a great product, you should be able to make billions of dollars if you want to. I mean, if you want to give it away, then you can give it away. It's your business, it's your money at that point. And Tim has a responsibility to the shareholders to make as much money as he can. But he just chooses to do that differently than what Steve Ballmer and Microsoft do.
Jim, one other thing I wanted to make sure we touch on, and that's what Marissa Mayer seems to be trying to do with Yahoo. She seems to be trying to turn it, trying to make it relevant. And she's made a couple interesting moves in the last few months. She hired David Pogue. And for David to leave the New York Times, whether the newspaper industry is thinking or not, I mean, it's the New York Times.
Yeah.
And so for David to leave, that just felt like that was an important thing. To sign up Katie Couric, whether you like her, whether you don't like her, whether you figure she's a hard-bitten journalist or not, she's still very high profile in the world of news. And now she's going to be doing things for Yahoo's front page, creating content, creating stories. This just feels like she's got her toes in a number of different areas, and she's really serious about maybe trying to make something brand new and different.
I've been very positive in my comments about Marissa since she took over, because I think that she can do it. I really do. I think she's hard-nosed enough to be able to do it, and from what I've heard, she asks the right questions of the people that are working for her. I have confidence that she's going to be able to pull something out. We'll see. She's got a tough road ahead, but she keeps doing a lot of little things, and Pogue and Katie, those are pretty big things, I think. But Marissa's making people stand up and take notice. So, and nobody has really taken notice of Yahoo in a long time.
Yeah. Anything else that strikes you as important in 2013 in the long term?
Wow. There's so many things that happen in the run of a year, that are important. I mean, we could look back at any of the purchases that Apple made this year and say, wow, they purchased that company in 2013, and now look what they did with it. Anything could happen.
Yeah, the only other thing that jumps to my mind is the whole Edward Snowden spying thing. Yeah. That there are repercussions here that are going to be felt for a long time, and not just by what he's revealed or may still reveal, but the idea that there's such a heightened awareness now on our privacy or about our privacy, and what is and is not private any longer.
I find privacy kind of funny because we all say that privacy is important to us, but then Walmart offers $10 off of something if you give us your name and email, and 2 million people are flocking to the website. They can't wait to give them their information. Can we contact you? Yes, just give me that money. So how important is privacy? I think privacy is important to an amazingly small amount of people. Really, that's what I think.
I can't. Yeah. How do you argue with that? I mean, because we all do it.
The average person is going to go out and sign up for whatever it is that they sign up for to get a free download of songs or free coupons for something. You can say, "Oh, privacy is important," but then hey Chuck, here's an unreleased Metallica album. All you have to do is give us your name and it's free. Download it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
So how important is privacy to us then? I mean, do you say, well, they're not going to release it,
But Jim, does that make us all a little schizophrenic about it? Or does it make us disingenuous about these arguments? Or is it reasonable for me to expect the NSA and the intelligence agencies of other countries around the world to listen in on this conversation?
Man, now you're talking deep and dirty stuff. But yeah, that's what with the Snowden stuff, that's what it are people listening right now? Because you said Snowden.
Yeah.
Are people listening?
Magic word.
Yeah. And how many magic words are there? Are people listening to your phone calls? And is there an expectation of privacy, or is the greater good, in that whole argument? I don't know. I don't know. Nobody really cares about Canada because there are no magic words up here. And, what are people going to listen into? Recipes?
Well, I don't know. And of course, Jim, that's where you get that fine line where people say, well, I'm not doing anything that's worth listening to. And yet I admit, I don't know what I would be doing that would be worth listening to, except bashing Microsoft at times.
Yeah. But
at the same time, am I comfortable with the idea that the NSA right now, hello to the NSA, is that a good thing? Or I don't know. I don't know where, and I'm not sure how I feel about the boundaries that are being placed on the intelligence agencies.
Are there any boundaries?
Well, they're trying to put boundaries on, but what would you do if you could stop someone from harming your kids or your wife? What would I do? I'd break every rule in the book.
Yeah. If I knew that any harm was going to come to Monique or the kids, and especially if Monique's insurance wasn't paid up,
put Monique on the line. I want to talk to her.
No way. I even have the volume down so she can't hear.
I keep saying one of these days I've got to get the wives of all the Mac Notables on. We'll have a whole different show.
Can you imagine? have something live. Like at Macworld, the wives of Mac Notables.
Yeah, there you go.
And do a panel with them. Oh, boy. I don't believe I just suggested that. But
I may talk to Paul Kent. That may be a good idea, Jim.
Wow.
Well, it's certainly been an interesting year, and I appreciate you sharing just a little insight, because you're right. There's so many stories. We could be here for hours.
Yeah.
But, you try to identify the big things going forward and what it means, and I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I hope you and Monique and the whole crew have a great holiday up there.
And you too.
Thank you.
We're gonna have a great time.
I don't doubt it for a second.
Down in the snow in our igloo.
Yeah. I want pictures of the igloo. That's what I want.
I'll send you pictures of the igloo. It's just like every other igloo. They all look the same.
Yeah, but I have an idea yours may be in Heineken green.
It's true?
Yep, I thought so. All the white ones out there, there's one green one.
Yeah.
That's the Dalrymple home.
That's how the mailman finds me.
It's great to see you, Jim. Happy holidays.
You too, Chuck. Thanks.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. He's Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Go check everything out. Jim always has some very insightful and very direct commentary on the world of tech and Apple. Direct, right, Jim? Direct. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date with all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.